You spend weeks, perhaps months, evaluating her communication style, her professional life, her immediate relationship history with ex-boyfriends. You look at the recent data, the surface performance. You are failing to see the psychological foundation upon which every single one of her adult relationship decisions is built. That foundation is her relationship with her father. The quality, depth, and specific emotional structure of a woman's childhood relationship with her father is the single most powerful predictor of her sexual behavior, her attachment style, her capacity for long-term commitment, and your future happiness together. If you cannot analyze and understand this dynamic, you are operating blind, and you will inevitably find yourself trapped in a painful pattern that originated decades before you ever met her. I'm going to walk you through exactly how that foundational relationship dictates her adult behavior, why she chases certain men, why she tests stability, and how to recognize the dangerous patterns that will destroy your marriage if you choose to ignore the deep psychological coding. This isn't about blaming fathers or simplifying complex trauma. This is about pattern recognition and risk management.
Because the man who raised her, or failed to raise her, established the template for what masculinity means, what provision looks like, what emotional security feels like, and what level of respect she expects and grants to a male partner.
He set the calibration for her hypergamy. And if that calibration is broken, you cannot fix it with love, patience, or resources. First, we must establish the profound, non-negotiable role the father plays in the daughter's psychological development. A father is the first man in a girl's life. When a father provides stable, reliable, and unconditional validation, the daughter learns that her worth is inherent, not something that must be earned through performance or sexual attention. This security allows her to approach adult relationships from a position of abundance and choice. But when that relationship is flawed, and in the modern context, flaws are the overwhelming norm, her entire psychological framework for relating to men becomes fundamentally distorted. The absence of a stable, validating father creates a vacuum that she spends her entire adult life unconsciously trying to fill. Before we dive into the specific behavioral blueprints, tell me where you are applying this crucial knowledge right now. Drop the name of the city you are watching from in the comments. Now, let's examine the 3 most common and devastating relationship templates stemming from a compromised father-daughter dynamic. You need to identify which template she is running, because that template is your future. The father might have been physically present, paying bills, sitting at the dinner table, but he was emotionally inert, critical, or simply too passive to assert a secure masculine presence. The daughter who experiences this learns a terrifying lesson. Male attention and validation are unreliable, scarce, and conditional. Her core belief is that she must earn male approval, and the easiest, most immediate way to earn male approval is through her physical availability and sexual performance. This template predicts a woman who becomes hyper-focused on external validation. She seeks out men who are also emotionally unavailable, who treat her inconsistently, or who are unattainable. Why? That instability feels like love. Consistent stability feels dull and suspicious. If her father was absent or passive, she will test you relentlessly. She will pick fights, withdraw intimacy, or manufacture crises to see if you will chase her. If you will show the intensity of pursuit she equates with emotional importance. When you remain stable, she often self-sabotages the relationship because genuine, secure intimacy is unfamiliar and therefore terrifying. Furthermore, the passive father failed to set boundaries, meaning the daughter often has underdeveloped self-respect and boundary management. She believes that a man's role is simply to concede or provide without demanding respect or reciprocity. You will find yourself exhausting all your resources trying to prove your commitment to a woman who fundamentally believes the only reason you are there is to fill the void her father left. That void, however, cannot be filled by a spouse. Only by years of painful, individual psychological work she is likely unwilling to do. If the father was overly controlling, setting rigid, often unreasonable rules, and criticizing her efforts rather than validating her personhood, the daughter learns that the only way to survive is to be two people, the compliant daughter in public and the secretive rebel in private. This template predicts a woman who, in her adult life, equates masculinity with constraint and freedom with rebellion. She is drawn to men who defy convention, who are often reckless, irresponsible, or explicitly disrespectful of authority. In a committed relationship with you, this manifests as extreme aversion to structure. The moment you suggest setting a shared budget, moving toward defining relationship boundaries, or establishing a family routine, she perceives it as an attempt to cage her. She struggles intensely with monogamy because the idea of being constrained by one man resurrects the primal fear of her father's control. If you are a structured, high-achieving, decisive man, the kind of man who creates security, she will initially be attracted to your strength. She will lie about small things to maintain a sense of internal privacy, even if the lie is unnecessary. She will have emotional or physical affairs not because she necessarily desires the other man, but because the act of secrecy represents the freedom she craves from perceived male tyranny. The result is often the hot and cold partner who oscillates violently between intense closeness and sudden, inexplicable withdrawal. Your future with this woman involves a constant, draining battle for autonomy, where she views you not as her partner, but as the authority figure she must continuously outwit or escape. This dynamic occurs when the father is loving, present, and devoted, but fails to transition the daughter from daddy's little girl into an autonomous adult. He treats her like a fragile princess, shielding her from consequences, solving all her problems, and setting the expectation that the world and all men should cater to her whims. This woman expects you to perform an impossible, idealized version of masculinity. You must be emotionally available, financially boundless, physically protective, and constantly attentive, all without ever asking for emotional labor in return. The defining characteristic of this template is the unachievable hypergamous standard. She is searching for a man who is the psychological equivalent of her father, only richer, hotter, and more perfect. If you commit to this woman, you will find yourself in an emotional position of perpetual debt. You are never good enough because you are being compared not to previous boyfriends, but to the idealized, infallible masculine template of her childhood. She struggles with empathy and compromise because she was never required to compromise with her primary male figure. When conflict arises, she expects you to apologize, even when you are right, because the core structure of her home life was built on her father buffering her discomfort. In all three of these templates, the absent father, the controlling father, and the over-involved father, the daughter arrives at adulthood carrying a deep, unresolved pain that dictates her choice of partner. She is not seeking a husband. She is seeking a healer for a wound she did not create. And when you fail to heal that wound, because no partner can, she will unconsciously punish you for her original disappointment. The behavioral patterns you see in her adult life, the tendency to cheat, the inability to commit, the chronic dissatisfaction, the constant testing, the emotional volatility, are not random acts of character. They are sophisticated, often unconscious psychological strategies developed decades ago to cope with the inadequacy of her first masculine relationship. You must accept that you are dating the result of her relationship with her father. How did she describe her father? Was he idealized, dismissed, or actively avoided? The answers to these questions are not just clues, they are the explicit terms of your future relationship contract. If the template is broken, you are signing up for heartbreak and drama that has been pre-programmed. This recognition is not designed to create fear, it is designed to create clarity. Clarity is power, and you must use this power to make decisions based on demonstrated psychological patterns, not on temporary romantic emotion. This deep dive is crucial because far too many men enter into commitment hoping that love will override biology and years of psychological programming. That hope is not wisdom, it is naivety. Now I need you to confirm your commitment to clarity. You are a man who seeks the truth, and we are a community built on recognizing these necessary patterns. Make the commitment to understand these dynamics completely. Join the men who are making informed, reality-based decisions about their future and subscribe to this channel. In the next part, we are going to move from the foundation to the specific execution. We will detail the 3 crucial relationship tests that women run on men unconsciously when they are operating from a broken father template, and how failing those tests guarantees infidelity, detachment, and eventual divorce. You must not miss the second part. The next chapter reveals how her deepest, oldest wounds will manifest as immediate, marriage-destroying behaviors in your household. We establish the foundational blueprints. We analyze the 3 most catastrophic archetypes resulting from a dysfunctional father relationship: the anxious, avoidant daughter, forever testing the commitment; the idealizer, perpetually waiting for the fictional savior; and the dismissive avoidant, who has learned that reliance on men leads only to disappointment. Now we move beyond the dating phase. We move into the conflict, the commitment, and the ultimate crucible of the relationship. The moment she starts seeing you not just as her partner, but as the ghost of her father, standing in your shoes. This is the point where the past stops being history and becomes prophecy. The wounds her father inflicted, whether through presence or absence, abuse or neglect, do not heal simply because she found a good man. Let me tell you precisely how this manifests when the initial romance fades and real life, with its stress, financial pressure, and inevitable conflict, sets in. Before we dive into how these deep psychological wounds explode during marriage, I want to know where this message is resonating. Drop your location in the comments now. Your location matters because these psychological dynamics transcend geography. They are universal laws of feminine nature and attachment. The first catastrophic manifestation occurs during conflict resolution. For the anxious, avoidant daughter, her father may have been inconsistently available, warm one day, cold and critical the next, teaching her that love is conditional and must be earned through drama or compliance. When you, her partner, introduce any form of disagreement or boundary, her childhood alarm system activates. She doesn't see a discussion, she sees abandonment. She is testing you to see if you will chase her the way she learned to chase her father's approval. If you back down constantly to soothe her anxiety, you reinforce the pattern. Emotional instability is the currency of connection. You teach her that boundaries are temporary and that hysterical performance is the only way to guarantee your presence. This dynamic is a guarantee for emotional exhaustion and a marriage where you can never fully relax, always waiting for the next manufactured crisis. Her father was either absent, making him a blank slate onto which she projected perfection, or he was so dominant and idealized by her mother that he became an impossible standard. When you fail, when you are tired, irritable, or simply human, she unconsciously contrasts you with the flawless, fictional man she believes she deserves. She argues about your character flaws. My father would never be so unmotivated, or he always knew how to handle money. This comparison disease breeds deep resentment. Because her relationship with her father was either a fantasy or a religious devotion, she never learned how to negotiate with a fallible man. Since you cannot be the god of her childhood, she defaults to contempt. Her criticism becomes a constant low-frequency hum of dissatisfaction, poisoning your self-esteem and eroding your masculine authority within the home. She views emotional neediness as a vulnerability and commitment as a trap. When conflict arises, she does not engage. She has zero conflict resolution skills because her default mechanism is self-protection through emotional isolation. She would rather solve a major marital problem alone and inefficiently than risk vulnerability and potential hurt from a masculine figure. You live in the same house, but she keeps a vast, silent gulf between you. Intimacy and partnership cannot survive this emotional fortress. The second area, where the blueprint becomes destiny, is in the realm of intimacy and physical connection. The father figure is the original masculine gatekeeper for safe physical closeness and appropriate boundaries. If her first experience of male authority lacked emotional safety, intimacy becomes fraught with risk. For some, this manifests as an inability to experience genuine, relaxed pleasure. She may withhold intimacy as punishment, not because she is genuinely uninterested, but because she needs to re-establish control over a man, a control she lacked in her youth. Conversely, others may develop an unhealthy fixation on validation through physical attention. Her body is seeking the affection her heart never received, often confusing intense, short-term excitement with genuine, safe love. This is why women with this history often struggle with what psychologists call comparison-induced desire dampening. You, her husband, represent safety and stability, which, to her wounded inner child, feels boring and non-validating compared to the fleeting, intense validation she received elsewhere.
The profound tragedy here is that the safety you provide is exactly what she desperately needs, but her psychological programming rejects it. because it doesn't align with the high-stakes, dramatic emotional landscape she associated with her first masculine figure.
You are too safe, too reliable, and therefore unconsciously less real or less exciting. The ultimate non-negotiable test of this father blueprint is parenthood. She unconsciously replicates the exact relational structure she observed growing up, regardless of whether she consciously despises that structure. If her father was absent or neglectful, she may become a maternal gatekeeper, subtly or aggressively limiting the father's access to the children, especially sons. She wants the resources you provide, but not the authority. She views your attempts at discipline or structured fatherhood not as partnership, but as potential threat, triggering her protective impulse. This is the ultimate theft of your family legacy, driven entirely by the wounds of her own childhood. If her father was abusive or overly authoritarian, she may oscillate wildly between extreme permissiveness, trying to give her children the freedom she never had, and sudden, unpredictable rigidity, reverting to the strict control mechanisms she witnessed. Her parenting is inconsistent, driven by emotional reaction rather than reasoned structure, leading to children who are either undisciplined or deeply confused about boundaries. And when you try to introduce balance, she will accuse you of adopting her father's worst traits. You are not just marrying her, you are marrying the shadow of her father, and that shadow demands that you either become him or that you forever attempt to fix the damage he left behind. So, what is the action plan? How do you distinguish between a woman who has genuinely processed and healed her wounds and one who is merely hoping your presence will cover them up? First, accountability and articulation. Has she done the deep work? A woman who has genuinely healed does not simply say, "My father was complicated." She can articulate the specific mechanisms of her father's dysfunction, identify how those mechanisms impacted her attachment style, and detail the conscious, consistent efforts she is making to override those automatic responses. She understands that she has an obligation to manage her triggers, not expect you to tiptoe around them. If she can't explain the why and the how of her transformation, she hasn't transformed. And hope is a terrible risk management strategy. Second, time-tested consistency and vulnerability. Healing is not a sudden epiphany. It is the slow, repetitive practice of vulnerability in the presence of safety. Does she allow you to express disappointment or set boundaries without resorting to dramatic escalation or emotional shutdown? Does she apologize authentically, acknowledging the impact of her past patterns, rather than just excusing her behavior? If her pattern is still to flee, blame, or manipulate when stressed, the blueprint is still active. A man who commits to a woman who has not done this deep, hard work is not being romantic. He is being an arrogant savior. It is not. The most loving thing you can do for yourself and for her is to recognize that some wounds are too deep for you to treat, and attempting to do so will only result in her dragging you down into her unresolved trauma. You cannot be the father she needed, and the man who tries to be that will only end up resented for the inevitable failure. You must look at her expectations of you. Or are they rigid, idealistic demands that belong on a pedestal constructed by a broken little girl? If you sense that you are constantly striving for an approval that seems impossible to earn, you are not her partner. You are her replacement father, and that contract guarantees your failure. If you see the blueprint, you are obligated to heed the warning. Do not accept a role that leads to your diminishment. Choose a woman whose psychological landscape is stable enough to build a family, not one who requires you to constantly police the ghosts of her past. The true breakthrough happens when you internalize this reality and decide your future is non-negotiable. Affirm this knowledge. Use this phrase to solidify the understanding that you are operating from a position of reality, not fantasy. Drop that phrase now and join the men who are making informed choices. You are now part of the small percentage of men who understand the profound psychological mechanisms that determine marital success. To guarantee you keep receiving this vital truth, subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the notification bell. This channel exists to arm you with the reality that mainstream culture actively attempts to suppress. And next time, we pull back the curtain on the silent contracts men make in relationships and how those unspoken agreements guarantee future resentment and dissatisfaction. You will not want to miss the analysis of what happens when you stop asking for what you truly need. Make sure you are subscribed. Your future depends on this clarity.